Boxing gossip here, guys. April's come to a close. It's been a great April. Um, Finished off with Anthony Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko. Good month for boxing. Fight of the year candidate in Darren Williams versus Jermaine Smile. Fight of the year candidate in Anthony Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko. And we roll on to May with a huge amount of momentum. And I just wanted to give you guys a quick preview and quick run through of the boxing calendar as we go into May. So let's start with the first weekend in May. This weekend coming, Saturday the 6th and Sunday the 7th of May. And it's a quiet week in terms of UK action, but certainly some stuff going on globally. For you UK fans like myself, at Saturday morning at about 10-11 in the morning, Joseph Parker will be taking on Razvan Kajanu. Now, I'm still waiting on clarification on whether or not that's with a UK broadcaster. I've emailed the guys at Duco to ask, so hopefully I'll get a reply to that. They're usually pretty prompt, and I'll let you guys know. But Joseph Parker versus Razvan Kajanu, let's be honest, it's a frustrating fight. You guys know the history to it with the Huey Fury pullout. I won't go through that again on this video, but it still deserves and merits attention. It is one of the heavyweight champions of the world in a fight. It's not a competitive fight. Bookmakers have it 1 to 100 on for Joseph Parker to be successful. But let's at least see how Joseph Parker looks and see how he takes care of business against Kajanu. Later that day, as we get into Sunday morning, a massive super fight over in the States, especially for the Mexican fans. Canelo Alvarez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now, I'm fascinated to see how this fight performs in comparison to Joshua versus Klitschko. Which one of those is actually the bigger fight. But Alvarez Chavez Jr. is a tremendous fight. It's one of these fights where, usually I'm very critical of catchweights in boxing. But I guess it's given the possibility of this fight being made. Alvarez, who's probably best known as a light middleweight or maybe a middleweight, taking on Chavez Jr., who recently has been campaigning as high as light heavyweight and even above that for a few catchweights. They're meeting at 164.5 pound catchweight. So, obviously the weight is taking up a lot of the discussion. How will Alvarez look against a much bigger guy? Will Chavez Jr. be weight drained? But these are probably the two biggest names in Mexican boxing. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. And you know what Mexican fans are like. They are hugely into their boxing. They are going to drive big numbers for this fight, and I'm sure it's got the potential to be a real entertaining battle. Number of key questions to look forward to in this fight. We may even cover them in a video later on this week. But yeah, that's an interesting fight, certainly. And I think, whilst that fight has kind of flown under the radar a bit in the UK scene, that is a massive fight globally, and that's a globally significant fight. Canelo Alvarez is certainly in the top 3 biggest stars in world boxing, and how he gets on against a guy like Chavez Jr. has the potential to shape some real mega matchups in the sport as we get into late 2017 and into 2018. David Lemieux also also stars in that undercard. That's weekend number 1 in May. Weekend number 2, which is the weekend of Saturday the 13th and Sunday the 14th, you've got a Frank Warren card, headlined in Leeds by Josh Warrington. Warrington takes on Kiko Martinez. That's a fight, if I'm brutally honest, I haven't perceived that that's caught the public's imagination. But Josh Warrington is clearly a very big name in Leeds. He's got a big fan base in Leeds and a fairly vocal following. So those guys will come out to support him, I'm sure, and it'll be interesting to see how Frank Warren does trying to sell out a big arena in Leeds. I understand there's going to be a lot of the Box Nation talent on the undercard, potentially the likes of Nicola Adams, maybe Daniel Dubois. We'll do a video on that to preview it as we get closer and discuss all the fights that are on the undercard. As I say, that's one that hasn't quite got my imagination just yet. Kiko Martinez, I think, as a bantamweight, really. I thought he was far too small to be mixing it at super bantamweight with the likes of Quigg and Frampton. So stepping up to a weight class even higher than super bantam to take on a guy like Josh Warrington, who's been out of the ring for some time, but he's a much naturally bigger man. For me, it's questionable how competitive that fight's going to be. So that's the second weekend. As we go on to the third weekend, the weekend of Saturday the 20th and Sunday the 21st, the major fight globally, Terence Crawford versus Felix Diaz. Now, there's a video already up on my channel discussing that fight. If you want to check it out, probably YouTube search Boxing Gossip Felix Diaz Crawford, and I'm sure it will come up, right at the top. So, yeah, for me, that's an interesting fight. Crawford's a huge favourite, and understandable. Crawford's one of the top fighters in boxing. A lot of people have him right at the very, very top of their pound-for-pound list, and certainly in terms of skill and in-ring capability, he's right there. Felix Diaz is a fighter I really like. He poses a very different stylistic question to most fighters out there. He's very much a short man. He's going to be substantially shorter than Crawford. He's going to be looking to come in low. He's going to be looking to fight an unorthodox fight, and he's going to try and turn this into a scrap. We suspect Crawford's got more class than him. But in frankness, the 140 division is fairly weak right now. You've got Crawford at the top and then quite a big gap to the next available contenders. And for me, Felix Diaz is an interesting fighter who brings a different test to the equation, and it's a fight I quite like. I understand Gary Russell Jr. is already scheduled to fight that night as well. I'll have to check closer to the time, see if that fight's still going ahead. No reason to suspect it isn't. I just haven't heard too much promotion and hype around it just yet. In the UK, Gervonta Davis will take on Liam Walsh. I believe that fight's on the Copper Box and will be a Frank Warren, BT Sports, Box Nation. That's actually a really, really interesting fight. I'm a big Liam Walsh fan. I've been to a number of his fights live and I've followed him for quite some time. And unfortunately, I just don't think he's going to be able to live with Gervonta Davis. I think Davis might hit too hard for Liam Walsh. But Liam Walsh is a fantastic boxer, really slick, slippery, back foot operator. And it's going to be a very, very big test for a guy like Gervonta Davis this early in his career to face someone as slippery and as experienced as Liam Walsh. I've seen Walsh clipped in fights. I've seen Walsh hurt in fights before. I was actually at one of Liam Walsh's fights where he was dropped by, I guess, what you could describe as a journeyman or gatekeeper type opponent. So I'm slightly concerned that a guy like Gervonta Davis, with a reputation as a puncher like he has, whether at some point he'll just find Watts and clip him, and that'll be the end of the fight. But it's an intriguing battle, and I think there's going to be another good undercard. A lot of these Frank Warren undercards develop into really, really interesting fights. They develop into some real good matchups. I need to double check that undercard again. We'll do a preview video as we get closer to the time, but maybe Anthony Yarley fighting for a Southern Area title, maybe Mitchell Smith. There'll be a few other names on that, I'm sure. So yeah, expect a video on that later on in the month. But that's a good week of boxing. As we go towards the last weekend, huge card in the UK, and I'm hoping that this is a card that will, sign off for May, just as we've had a fantastic fight in Joshua Klitschko sign us off for April. I know Chavez Canelo is probably a bigger fight in terms of global significance. I know Terence Crawford may be a bigger name in the pound-for-pound list, but for me, Kell Brook versus Spence is a quality fight. It's the epitome of a 50-50 fight. I believe both guys can win. I believe there's a huge amount of unanswered questions going into that fight, which leads to a really enthralling equation. And great undercard as well. George Groves versus Fedor Chudinov. Oh, that's a great fight. That's another 50-50 matchup for me. I could make a strong case for either guy winning that. I actually believe that both guys in this fight have weaknesses that could easily be exposed by the styles that their opponent presents. Dave Allen versus Lenroy Thomas for the Commonwealth title. I've had a look at Lenroy Thomas. I believe that's a 50-50 fight. So for me, Brook Spence, Groves Chudinov, Allen Thomas, three very, very competitive matchups. Two of them extremely high class for world titles, one of them for the Commonwealth title. Buzzing for that card, really, really looking forward to it. That could be a fantastic end to May. That night also, on another card, I believe Robert Helenius is scheduled to take on Derek Chisora in a rematch of their first fight. That's a fight I look forward to. I enjoyed the first fight. It's a rematch that's been a long time in the making. I like Chisora. I actually don't mind Hellenius either on this channel, so I will await that with great interest and look forward to it. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on what a month for boxing April was. Let me know what you're looking forward to in May most. You know, do you think May is a vintage month for boxing? What do you think is going to be the highlights of the month? Leave your comments in the section below. Let me know your thoughts on any and all of the fights that we have discussed throughout the course of this video. If you've enjoyed the content, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't done so before for whatever reason, please hit subscribe, and you can check out all of my other videos on YouTube. Many thanks indeed for tuning in.